On Christmas morning, an inmate murdered a corrections officer by the name of Andrew Lansing. He was killed by inmate Rashawn Cannon, and Rashawn was coming home soon with a release day of 2030. Now Rashad has many write-ups since 2023, and 2 of these write-ups came from Lansing, one for not obeying orders, and another time for finding K2 in his cell. This podcast we have a corrections officer on, and we are going to talk about this incident and other incidences that go down behind the walls, even on the outside of the walls, because these corrections officers might have their own secret societies and organizations.
New Age Plug, you did again. You already know what it is. We got DVS, we got Corrections Mom, we got AZ Ruction. This is the only place where you're going to get the inmates and the corrections going through these news and everything going down right now out here in the world, prison genre, all of it. Right now we have obviously the Robert Brooks situation. We've seen DVS on the front line protesting for Robert Brooks.
Robert Brooks! Robert Brooks! Robert Brooks! Robert Brooks! Robert Brooks!
Any updates with that, DVS?
No, those officers still have not been charged. Looks like it's going to be swept under the rug until somebody actually says, you know what, we've had enough, and makes enough of noises to be heard from those who can actually change shit and really do what needs to be done, because it doesn't seem like anything's going to happen. It looks like it's back to the normal program.
Now, your video, that was the family of Robert Brooks you were showing that was there. And then you seen the United Healthcare truck go right behind them. That was pretty eerie.
That was definitely not the United Healthcare truck, I don't believe.
I seen a video that they're going to charge 16 people and they're all going to lose their jobs. And they're even going to fire the nurse that was a witness to it because she didn't step in and stop. I don't know how she's going to step in and stop all these men from beating up somebody. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, they've got a culture where even if she wanted to say something, he or whoever the nurse was, wouldn't be. It would be enemy number one for whoever it is that does that. Those SEALs run everything up there. They're the law. So if you go against that from their side, the inmate side, you are a target and you will be dealt with as such.
Yeah, probably. And also the nurse relies on them for protection. So it's probably, but regardless, as far as I'm concerned, somebody's got to stand up for what's right. You got to, it's not easy. Trust me. Administrators hated me because I was always speaking out about what was right and what wasn't, and, about dirty stuff that went on at the prison. They did not like me. They tried to fire me more than once, but I always fought back. So it takes courage to stand up and say, wait a minute, this isn't right. Y'all need to stop. She could have called the police. She could have called 911. That's what I would have done, is probably just call 911.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then let the police deal with it, because it is a crime being committed within the prison, and officers were the perpetrators. But you got to stand up for what's right. You got to stand for something, right?
Yeah. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Right. People need to draw a line and stand up for what's right, regardless of what the threat is. Do you know what I mean?
No, I agree 100%. I know it's easier to say that than actually do it. I've been in New York State Department of Corrections, and if you decide to show that you're on the inmate side, or you're for the inmate and you're not for the officer, they will make sure that you will quit, or something will happen. They'll get you.
Like we talked about, though, that's like a whole culture down there. It's generational for COs, for cops, for firefighters, etc. They're all generational type of people usually, so they're always gonna have each other's back.
Well, yeah, wherever that particular prison is, that's the industry for that county. So that's what it would be. They're gonna know each other from young, cousins, aunts, friends of the family, school, high school, and then ultimately they go to what the industry is for them up there, and that's the prison system. That's where they work. And some people go to a warehouse and work on online. Well, New York State, they don't have those warehouses or those kind of jobs for industry. The industry is the corrections
Yeah,
department.
that's what I was gonna say. There's not a lot of job opportunities, even North Florida. I compare it to upstate New York a little bit too, because those small towns, there isn't. You go on Indeed or you go on any of these job, Monster dot whatever it is. All you see is CO jobs. If I'm capping, I'm napping, bro. I see it all the time. This CO job, CO job.
Yeah, it's hard. It's so hard to find COs. Even police officers, the New York City police officers, they're having a problem recruiting and having people to fill up their classes for the academy and stuff like that. It's not a desirable job anymore. It's not. Everybody knows what the shit is already. You know what I mean? Like they're spending so much money. I think COVID really kind of backfired on a lot of things because it gave people the opportunity to really see what things were, they couldn't see before. And it's like, why would I want to contribute to the system that is pretty much trying to get everybody to be enslaved or be a prisoner?
Well, not all. There are a lot of good police officers and a lot of good correctional officers. It's just the ones that are abusive and egregious. Those give the good officers a really bad rap, and and also Hollywood TV movies and stuff like that. That stuff, I hate to watch those kind of shows because um, they really always put the officers in a bad light, and they don't give them the respect they deserve. They call them guards, like security guards. They're not security guards. We're not mall cops. You're working every day with convicted felons, people that have been convicted of committing crimes like murder, crimes of violence, rape, child molestation, SOs, sex offenders, the bad guys. Because usually you get away with a lot of crime, commit a lot of crimes before you literally get caught. A lot of criminals can commit dozens and dozens of crimes before it catch up with them.
Yeah.
So these are brave officers. These are brave people. Now we got bad apples, of course, but it all starts from the top. And when inmates are beat up and killed, and inmates are mistreated in that kind of a terrible way, it comes from the top. The top knows what's going on.
Yeah,
All the way
absolutely.
from the director should be fired. And the problem is too, worse than that is, I've seen it in Arizona. They say, "Oh, we fired this person. We fired this person." I've seen it personally. This one, she's a deputy warden now, or she
Hmm.
was when I was working, and she had 3 DUIs in a state vehicle.
Whoa.
The problem with that
Dang, she
is,
could be in prison.
well, she never went to prison. They covered her ass, and then they would say, "Oh, we fired her." Right? They didn't fire her. What they did was they passed the trash. They moved her to a small unit up northern Arizona, and let her sit there for a few years, and then they promoted her and sent her to Lewis, where I worked, and she didn't do any time in prison. The egregious thing about her having drinking and driving in a state vehicle is state vehicles don't have insurance because the state just writes a check. They don't require insurance on state vehicles. So basically, if you get hit by a government official in a state vehicle and they're drinking or under the influence, it's a blank check. You can go to court and basically get whatever you want. They're going to settle because they
Oh,
don't have insurance. That's what's so egregious about it, and the fact that they're supposed to be a state official and should be abiding by the law. But this lady was my deputy warden.
yeah. I've seen that happen
I was
before.
there long enough to know. They figure most people aren't going to be there long enough to remember her,
Of
right?
course.
So then they just send her off for 4 or 5 years, whatever, and then she come back as your deputy warden later. And I remembered her when she got in trouble. So I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
That's
Well,
what they do.
we have to remember too that Sheriff Joe Arpaio, everybody loved him, but when you look him up in the 90s, he had a felony for soliciting prostitution. That's why he wasn't able to carry a real gun. That little 6-shooter he had, that's a rubber gun.
Really? I know who you're talking about, AZ. They call him the
Not even
Grady
real.
Judd. They call him the Grady Judd of Arizona.
Yeah, well, he was a felon
But
in
he
the
was an
90s.
elected official. He was an elected. They should have the same background checks for elected officials as they do, because they're in actually a higher, more powerful position than people that are just hired with and get their background checks done, right? Like, what did that lady have that had those 3 DUIs? What did she have on everybody else that everybody covered for her and allowed her to promote and kept her job and just moved her? I've seen that happen many times,
We're
you
going
know,
through
and
a scandal
I
like
just
that
called
right
it
now.
passing the trash. That's just what I called it, passing the trash. Because they don't get rid of these people because they're holding everybody else's dirty secrets.
No, absolutely. Where New York City is going through a scandal like that right now. The commissioner or there was somebody high up,
Director?
the director, the police commissioner. This guy, he's been in law enforcement for quite some time. He had a scenario where he got shot in a love triangle back in the 80s or the 90s. They did the same thing that they did with that officer you're talking about. Let him rock out, gave him a post, let him, disappear, and then they promoted him all the way to what he was now. But now he's got a scandal with overtime pay and using it as a tool for sexual favors.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of weird stuff. I mean, anytime the higher you go up in government, the more corruption you're going to see. And I was just at the state level. I mean, and there was plenty of it there. I just steered clear of all that
Being
dirty stuff.
being
And they
a
steered clear to me for the most part too, because they knew that I stood up for what I felt was right and that I didn't tolerate that kind of shit in front of me. I'd report you. So a lot of the dirty officers steered clear to me and stayed away from me because sometimes they know who might keep their mouth shut and who won't. And they knew I
yeah.
wouldn't. So they kept clear of me. So some stuff I sure happened. I didn't even witness. I heard about it over the years, but I didn't witness some things because that was going on because they probably didn't want me involved because they knew I would blow the whistle.
Yeah, I was gonna. You answered my question. I was gonna ask. I was gonna say if you experienced anything like that, like the men, the CEOs trying to do sexual advances towards you or something like that.
Well, also,
Well,
hey,
yeah, of
Ma,
course that happened.
you can tell them about the sex parties.
Yeah, there's I don't know. At one point, I think they were trying to frame me up. I generally didn't go to DOC parties. I went to one party early in my career, and it was like a luau, but it was like a birthday party. But showed up very early. It was only me and a couple people there, and I left early. I didn't stay. When everyone started showing up, I left because I didn't want to be involved in any whatever they might have going on. And then they came back and said rumors that I was dancing with the lesbian and that I was a lesbian. I wasn't even there, dude. I was there for like 30 minutes and I left before everyone even.
Well, we're gonna edit that out because then the troll's gonna take that and twist that one out.
Hey, let
Well,
me
it was a
ask you
lie.
this though.
It was a lie.
This is like some Illuminati correction officer. We were talking about this last time. DVS brought up. I wouldn't be surprised if they're in some kind of secret society. And AZ was like, "Man, I wouldn't doubt it." And then Mama Corrections coming with that, confirming that they'd be doing stuff on the side is pretty insane. And yeah, was there other women that you were
Well,
working with dealing with this too?
yeah, but some of them are participants. And one time was invited to a hotel where there was supposed to be a party or whatever. And I showed up and went because it was just down the street, and I just had a drink at the bar and then left. I really didn't stay, but they had an indoor pool, And I seen a bunch of shady people that I knew were shady, and I'm like, no, I'm not staying. And I left. And then later, a whole bunch of rumors came out about their wild party and how people were kicked out because they were taking their clothes off in public at the bar, all kinds of weird shit. So there, and then like there was a sex circle that was at Perryville that they busted, and it was just a bunch of people that were involved in parties where they were having orgies and different sick stuff going on. See, but most of the time, parties and things like that, I wasn't invited. Especially later in my career, nobody invited me to things like that because I would probably call the cops. I
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
wouldn't be, you know what I mean? Like I wouldn't
By the book.
participate. So they knew that I wouldn't participate. So I never got, but there was a big bust at Perryville, the women's prison, about some weird stuff like that was going on. And there are stuff like that goes on. There are corrupt
It's
officers.
it's almost like a college campus. This is the way I look at it, anyways. When I see the COs, I've heard the locker room talk amongst the COs. They come and they let us know what's going on. You can tell, but it's almost like high school again. You know what I mean? If there's a female COs and the popular guy, he's like the head of security or whatever, or he's got the muscles. Like it goes into that same way of thinking where it comes back to a high school kind of formula where I'm gonna try to get this one, or a new one comes in, or I've seen it. It gets real crazy to the point where you're like, whoa. Even on shifts,
Well, that stuff's considered sexual harassment, but they have like sexual harassment liaisons, which was always a joke because I'd been sexually harassed. It's rampant at the prison. And you report it and they don't do anything. They'll come in and act all official like they're going to interview you and they're going to do something, and they didn't. They don't do anything about it. If anything, they give you a harder time later for reporting it.
of course, of course.
And they put you at the same unit. I had an officer physically attack me in
Whoa.
front of my unit. He grabbed my jacket. He was much taller than me and bigger than me. He grabbed my jacket and started humping my leg and stuff. And I was screaming and yelling. And luckily, another male officer that I had known for years, him and another officer came out, and I'm screaming for help. And they grabbed him and had to throw him to the ground to get him off of me. And then they wrote reports and they put me back at the unit with that clown. And he
See,
literally sexually attacked me.
this
I
is where
mean,
it's crazy,
my
right?
clothes were on. My clothes were on, but
I'm
he was.
about to contradict myself in a lot of ways, right? With this whole Robert Brooks thing. And I know it sounds crazy, but I'm going to try to make a point here, Mama AZ. That shit would have never happened in New York State. Prisoners are not even, like, COs don't even. COs, like, the COs the ones that, like, helped get him off of you, listen, he wouldn't have made it. He would have been dead. Like, just like how Robert Brooks is. Like, that is not a thing. There's a thing where the COs, like, they have a real high respect for their women, and the inmates know that shit immediately. You will get killed for reckless eyeballing, flirting,
Yeah, you said
anything
that.
like
You said that when you had
That
a
was a
woman
fellow
CO, you
officer.
would act different. You would actually quiet up. You don't want any smoke with the
that.
women
Yeah, I don't
COs.
want. Listen, even if listen, if you there's I've seen dudes get lied on and set up and nothing happens. The female CO just didn't like them, or didn't like the way they smelled, or wanted to see how much pull they had, and guess what? Shit, they earthquake shit. They come and they fuck shit up, bruh. Like, there's none of that in New York State. There's no talking reckless to a female CO. There's no reckless eyeballing. There's none of that shit. You will die. So
Well, what happened to me? That was a fellow officer.
yeah, that would
Uh,
definitely not happen in New York State. They
That's
have
crazy, right?
different kind of ethic code, I guess, when it comes to their own. You know, even they don't even have to be in a relationship with this woman. This woman could just be a woman, a correction officer woman. You
Hmm.
violate, oh my God, man. Phew, you're done. You're going in a box. And I don't mean the box. I'm talking about the pine box behind the prison. You're done. and everybody knows it. It's something that everybody knows. It is a unwritten law. You don't say shit to a female CO. You don't even nothing.
Well,
Now,
it ain't
right
like
after,
that. It ain't like that in Arizona. Drives me off. Inmates will say all kinds of stuff to officers. Sometimes other inmates will put them in check.
Let's make that clear though, that hey, that doesn't happen on a GP yard. The yards you're talking about are no good yards. You can't do that shit on a regular GP yard. You're not doing that. They're not allowing that because even though you're an officer and we don't really like the officers that much. It's one of those things, though. It's still a female. You can't sit there and do weird shit like that. Get caught gunning on a GP yard. And I'm not talking a 2 yard. We're not talking minimal custody because them dudes they just run amok. But we're talking 3, 4, 5, and a 6 yard. You're not doing that. That's not happening if you're on a GP unit. Now, you get the other ones. Because I know that there's a lot of times like where you talk about certain yards you're on, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a sex offender yard.
Who you
Oh,
talking
that's a PC yard.
Well, that depends on what time you're talking about because
Yes,
they
I was
change
just about to
custody
say
of the
that.
yards all the
They
time.
do change it a lot. But if you get cook unit has never changed. Cook unit is cook
No,
unit.
it's always
Cook
been a sex
unit,
offender yard.
it's always been a sex offender yard. That yard never. If I heard somebody say they were on cook unit, man, hell no.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
they're the
got
ones that
Now
made you
you
guys'
are right
bread.
though.
cases that are like that too. We
They
can
made all
tell.
the bread there. They made the bread and the toast. They made all the bread for the toast for breakfast.
Fucking gross.
Heard all kinds of stories of things that they be doing with that dough.
That's disgusting.
Well, I had to eat that shit, so we're not going to talk about that.
So recently we had a corrections officer in Ohio pass away. Now, DVS and corrections mom at AZ, is that something common? Have y'all ever been in an experience where a correction officer died while y'all were doing all your bids? Even mom at AZ, I call that a bid, even though you're working.
No, not me. I'll just say that. No, not me.
No,
Well,
I
it's
have.
not that uncommon because they name units after officers.
I was in
Most units
Browning.
are named after officers.
I was in Browning, which was the highest level supermax in Arizona. The reason why it was called Browning is because Officer Browning was a female, and she was pulled in by a sex offender, and she was raped and killed, and they named her after the unit, Browning unit.
Wow.
Well, and what happened to the Lumley unit at Perryville? Lumley was killed on the unit. The inmates came in to the control room, which had a flimsy door. I worked at Lumley unit, and he stabbed him to death.
Yeesh.
Mm-hmm.
What do
So
you do?
all these, they said there was a cell search that they did, and something about disrespect. The inmate said that they disrespected his family pictures or something.
Can't do that
Whether
though.
that's
You can't do
whether
that.
that we don't know if that's true or not. Nobody really knows. That's just
Okay,
what was said.
let
And
me
then
give let me
he came in and stabbed him to death, killed him.
Go ahead,
let me
AZ.
give this insight too. I was in a position to where I was around the big homies. So if a CO, so the way it was portrayed to me is don't get disrespectful with a CO if you don't plan on taking action, right? So if you're just gonna run your neck to a CO and be like, "Oh, you're a bitch, you're a punk," and then they call you a bitch or a punk back, and you're not gonna do anything, well, now you're in the hot seat because now you make the rest of us look bad. So there are times where if they called me a punk or a bitch, thank God they didn't, but I would have had to take flight. As soon as they would have had to do a cell search, I'd have had to take flight because then it's my ass. I'm the one that gets unalived or gets smashed out. I'm the one that has the problem now.
But doesn't that
So
have
there
a
are
difference? Does that make a difference on whether you're male or female?
No,
If your officer's a female,
no,
it makes a difference. They don't always go after females for
no. Females get a little bit more of a leeway, but
yeah.
if a female is still going to be super disrespectful, she's going to get it just like the males. That's just what it
Well,
is. My celly took flight on 2 sergeants. That's why he got an extra 6.5 years, was because 2 sergeant cops, one was a male, one was a female, and they were calling him a punk bitch and all kinds of shit. And he smashed them both out. And he was a big ass wood. Like, he was huge. I'm talking, 19, 20-inch arms.
Yeah, they
well,
were looking
that's
for.
Massive
one.
ass
They
dude.
wanted to go out on comp, man. That's what they
N-
wanted.
Now
It
That's one
doesn't
here,
thing you
at that
can't
point.
say.
It doesn't matter at that point. At that point, if you're gonna disrespect is disrespect. They don't have a color or a gender for disrespect. Now they will allow you. Sometimes they'll let certain things ride, but for the most part, if you know what you're doing while you're there, like Ma, you knew what time it was. You're not gonna call. I've never heard you say you called this inmate, especially on a GP yard, a punk or a bitch, because like you're not that type of disrespectful person. But at the same time, there's consequences that come with that, and you've been there long enough. You kind of know, like
Well, you
there's
can't
certain
say
things.
punk ass bitch to inmates because you're basically calling them out
That's
for.
what I'm saying. So it doesn't matter.
Well,
There's no.
if they don't defend themselves, if they don't defend their own honor, like I guess, because it basically means that you let other inmates
Well,
sexually have their way with you,
we
then
have to
you're going
let
to be
other
a
inmates
target.
know too.
You're going to be a target to the other inmates because they're going to think that you're easy.
Well, no, it's
That's
not.
why they got to
It's
defend
not just that.
themselves.
It's an embarrassment to the rest of us. So
Yeah.
like, and I'm talking like the woods, right? So it's an embarrassment to the rest of us. Like you're gonna let somebody like call you out of your name like that? Because if we don't let an inmate do it, why would we let a cop do it? It don't
d-
matter. Like
does it
there.
contradict a little bit? Sorry, a little bit
Go
earlier
ahead.
when we were talking about another CO touching another female CO, the inmates would come in between that. Like you can't touch a female, but you're saying if a female disrespects you, you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to handle that.
I mean, it's not really a contradiction, but I get what you're saying. Yes, because look, I guarantee you, if you're on a GP yard and another male CO was to do what they did to my mom in front of a GP yard,
Mm,
the other inmates would step in and be like, "Nah, that shit ain't flying."
mm.
Now
Probably.
I'm sure
we're
he
not
felt
trying to
comfortable because he
protect
was in the
cops.
What
front
happened to
ranks.
me happened in front of the unit when we were waiting for the bus to come pick us up. It wasn't in the unit.
That's what I'm saying though. If
So
that was
the
to happen
outcome
on
was
a
different.
if it was to happen on a GP yard or unit, however you want to say it, GP yard, I guarantee you're going to have at least one, maybe 2 or 3 other inmates are going to pop up and be like, hold up, we ain't doing that. I don't know what you think you're doing. Because to us, that's still sexual harassment. That's still,
Well,
that's still
it was sexual assault. It was clearly sexual assault.
yeah,
Right.
What
well,
was on or off?
if you were to if somebody was to commit a crime where they got a sexual assault for doing that on the street, and you come into a GPR with that type of paperwork, you're getting smashed the fuck
You
out.
gotta remember,
You're
this is the
done.
CO. This is the CO that did that shit. So you gotta
Yeah.
remember
I get that.
that goes back to
I'm,
CO feeling comfortable because he probably, that's his thing. He
but
was
we're
in a
still gonna
place
look at it the same way.
where
We're
that
still
was
gonna look at that CO as a
um,
sex offender at that point.
well,
Mm.
everybody that stood there and watched is pretty much condoning that shit. I'll tell you this right now, in New York
Well,
State, man.
nobody stood and watched. It was in front of the unit. It wasn't on the yard. And the 2 officers that came out after that, they protected me and threw his ass to the ground. And then they did the paperwork. But administration failed because they didn't do anything about it. They let him work on the unit with me.
Yeah, that's sick.
Wow.
They should have moved him or fired him. They should have fired him.
He should have been
but they didn't.
arrested. No, that should have been like an arrest.
Well, that
Right.
was on my bad because I
Right.
didn't report it to the police because, I was leaving that morning to catch a plane to take care of my father in Minnesota who was dying of brain cancer. So I didn't
Oh
have
man.
the time to deal with it the way it should have been dealt with because I was hopping on a plane to Minnesota to deal with my father's brain cancer. So, and I was gone a whole month taking care of his business. So, I wasn't able to handle it the way I should have handled it because I was leaving.
15, Rashawn Cannon committed a series of robberies at 18. He robbed his own uncle at gunpoint, stealing money from
See
his
what
own
I'm saying though?
uncle
We know
while
more
pointing a
about this guy
gun
that
at his
killed the CO than we know more about all the COs that kill Robert Brooks.
Yeah, of course. I was just thinking that too. I said, yo, this is fucking real convenient how they just flipped this whole thing because it's almost like the same kind of charges that fucking Robert Brooks had in a weird way. And I'm like, wow,
Desensitized.
desensitizing the whole situation. Thank you, Plug. I'm just fucking, I'm sorry about the F word too. It's just, I see what you're saying. It's clear. Like, what about those officers? What do we know? I know their salaries went buku sky high. Like they had overtime out the yin yang, and that's another thing, another practice in New York State. Man, they will chalk up that overtime, and they will get that money, and they get paid pretty well. They got boats, race cars, all kinds of crazy ass hobbies.
Different kind, yeah, and they don't get paid well in the South. I want to say that. Like I was just looking at that, seeing how I was like, well, what's a pay rate for a correctional officer? It said $18 an hour, bro.
That's disgusting, bro. They make like 32 at top rate.
And this was a
something like
state
that.
prison. This was a state prison.
But that overtime is wild. They have a way of doing bids and swapping hours for other people, and then doing like I do 3 days straight, and then I got somebody that's gonna do my 2 shifts. Like it's crazy, man. They got that shit flowing and going. That
Well, I
shit-
think they have sleeping quarters for officers that do double shifts where they could sleep and then go back to work, stuff like
Mhm.
that, don't they?
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
all prisons have that. Arizona didn't have that. Texas didn't have that, but I know California does. A couple other states do. So they have a strong ability to do a lot of overtime because they just crash out. Because a lot of times the prisons, they're in rural areas outside of the city. I don't know about New York or anything like that, but
Everything is all the way upstate.
usually prisons are outside of the city. People don't want to see a prison, you know what I mean? Except for county jail. That's a different story. It's usually right there, but near the courthouse.
Hmm.
So, I think it's just like a culture among some officers, but not all officers are part of that culture.
his uncle's head. Cannon said he went through 88 programs within the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, including Cage Your Rage and a victim awareness program. He still wrote,
Hey,
one of my
real quick,
biggest
DVS.
areas that
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I just want to say, hey, as a former ex-con and a former drug addict and somewhat of a still dealing with addiction in some ways, 88 programs in I feel like the state failed him. 88 programs.
Talk that.
That's a lot. That's
That
all bad. Hey, something's wrong with them programs because 88 programs and you still can't get him to get it right. Now he's
well,
gonna
you gotta
make his own
remember
choices,
programs, man. Programs are
but
made
some gotta
to save
give
money.
at that point.
Programs were made to generate money. Let's be real. It's just like the Medicare scam that they got going on with Medicaid and all that. It's the same shit. All that shit is tied through Medicaid, bro. Everybody that
Well,
goes through
that's the
the
state
program,
failing him though.
of
Because there
course,
are
because
some states where you can go through programs, DVS, and people are more successful than
crime pays,
not.
bro. Crime pays,
Not
bro.
every
The
place,
more you
but
perpetuate it, the more money you continuously have. They know they're insured for the next 20. They're 25 years out, bro. This is not next year physical cycle. This is we're 25. We're doing 25-year investments here, and we want to make sure that all the numbers are right. And they're gonna make sure that that's how it goes. They know where all that shit is going, bro.
well, I've been in
It's gonna
programs where they
fix
truly
people.
want to help you, though. I've been in programs where they really truly want to help
Of
you.
course, I have
They're
too.
really there.
But programs don't fix and change people. That has to be a shift within that person to want to
100%.
change. If they don't want it, they can attend 10,000 programs. But if they don't want to change, there's no program that can fix you. You have to reach a point where you want the
Yeah,
change.
but when I didn't want a program to help fix me, I would just leave the program.
He was probably just doing a lot of programs because it looked good.
Not
Because his
88.
plan was he asked to get out early for one of those charges, so he was saying, "Look, I did all these programs. I'm a good guy now. I'm trying to be reformed. Give me a
But
chance."
programs take months and years. So to do 88,
Well, who's to say that it really did 88? They could be saucing and joshing, man. They could be doing whatever they want to
true.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot.
True.
I don't even think
That's a
there's that many
lot.
It's a
available.
lot. 8 is a lot.
That's what
bro.
I'm saying. That doesn't make sense. 88. That's
Astronomical. No. Yeah, that's
There's
crazy.
not
a
even
lot.
They were running up his Medicaid fucking crazy, bro.
There's not
Yeah,
even
that's a lot.
Is there really even that many programs available?
I don't think
if
so.
there is, they need to do an audit on how the fuck they're collecting all this money for them programs. Because shit,
Yep.
I need a program to help me out. I need a loan for a down payment on a house. You gonna help me out with that? Definitely not.
What I am working on is acting off impulse, because that is what fails me every time. And possible serious lack of correctional officers within the state. On your side, I'm investigator Lisa.
Wow, we were just talking about that.
Photo of him. They say Lansing
like
was
a good
friendly,
guy.
outgoing officer who
Don't always judge a book by its cover, brother.
treated everyone with respect and was always professional. They did not release much
Probably dark horror stories behind that smile.
information about how he died, and
And
we
we
have
don't know
requested
nothing about
records
him.
to
I'm
find
gonna
out.
let everybody know it's hard to find stuff. There's
I
no
heard
write-ups, nothing.
I heard from different sources allegedly, just passing through the feeds. I don't know what's real and what's not, but I heard some pretty wild things, man. He wasn't that big happy guy you see in the picture there.
What do you mean? That he was involved in nefarious activities?
So from what I was hearing on certain TikToks, and I think it might have been Instagram too, that he had, he wasn't treating inmates correctly. Like he was treating them badly. Like he wasn't good guy he portrayed to be in that picture. From what I heard, he was putting things in people's food. He was, putting hands on people, stuff like that, being real nasty. I need to do a little bit more homework about it because this is all allegedly, but this is what I
Yeah,
heard.
that's what I was about to say. So you're coming with, all right, so just playing devil's advocate, you're coming with stuff allegedly against a CO that got murdered, so you're victim shaming in a way. On top of that, Robert Brooks, we know facts about him, stabbing a woman, and we just bat an eye. So I'm just kind of just get it clear for me real quick. Exactly. Keep going.
Hold on, I'm looking it up now. Just chill out, brother.
Okay.
Well,
I'll pause. You want me to pause it?
You need to be careful if somebody's murdered like in the job like that. It's a very stressful, difficult job to do. It's a
It's a
thankless
first-degree
job.
murder. Let's get to the facts. It's like
Capital murder, what it is. It's capital murder.
capital.
He could go to
Yeah.
death penalty because he's killed a officer.
EMT officer. Yep. Any of them. I don't know how the United Healthcare guy. I don't understand how that's that shouldn't be a first-degree murder because he's not a EMT or anything like that. The Brian Thompson, the Luigi situation. I don't know how they're.
Maybe the district attorney is allowed to elevate it, but I think you have to go by the law and the description of what capital murder is, right?
Well,
he wasn't a government official.
Yeah, exactly. He was just he was a CEO of a company.
They're trying, that may not fly. I mean, that could be shot down in court because you have to be a government official, a police officer, or federal agent to get capital punishment.
Or an EMT.
EMT, yep.
Do it to a postal worker. Same thing.
I bet you a cross guard too or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know about crossing guards.
Like an
Yeah, I
There's
was
old
gonna
lady
say
cross
volunteers
it.
guard,
now.
an
They're
old lady,
volunteers. Come on now.
That's usually a teacher or a volunteer.
or a retired cop. You never know.
Well, hey, if
Yeah.
he's a retired cop,
And
that might
even
be a
if it's
different
an
story
accident,
now.
even if you accidentally kill somebody, I was supervising a chick in Texas, and she accidentally killed a sheriff's officer at a concert. He was making derogatory remarks to her because she was a dyke, and this is how she told it to me. That was her verbiage. And
You
she hit him
lesbian,
over
you
the head with a
lesbian.
beer bottle and didn't expect to kill him. She just hit him over the head with a beer bottle and it killed him. He had an aneurysm and died from it. And she got life sentence. She didn't get death, but they tried to charge her with capital murder.
And Texas don't play around, boy. You get on, hey, you do something crazy, hey, you're gonna be on the fast track to the electric chair.
Yeah, well, I think they didn't give it to her because they couldn't prove it was premeditated, but they could prove that he was harassing her about her sexuality or whatever, and that she simply hit him over the head with a beer bottle, and that
Well,
was
the fact
enough.
that she got life still,
She
even though
still
he
got
was
life sentence.
provoking it,
Yeah.
she got a life sentence still, and he was provoking it. I still don't agree with that. I don't think she should have got a life sentence. You know what I mean? Like, hey, don't get me wrong, murder's not okay, and killing somebody is not always justified. But at the same time, when you're provoking somebody and you're in law enforcement, I feel like I don't know. My take is a little bit different, I guess.
Well, I think too that
Not
no
right.
matter who it is, if it's an officer that kills, if somebody dies while they're taking them down, like we've seen these people die, and then the autopsy comes out that they were on drugs and they had a heart problem. You don't know what people's medical history is, but
I know who you're talking about.
if they die because you're committing a crime, while you're committing a crime, it's considered murder,
Well,
right?
isn't what the officer doing considered somewhat of a hate crime?
Not really. I mean,
Well, you
if
can't
he's
really
taking
judge
somebody
somebody on their
down,
sexuality, right?
if he takes
It
somebody down and they already have an underlying health problem, they die when they're
No,
taking
I'm
them
not
into
talking about.
custody.
We're not talking. I'm not talking about George Floyd because that's who you're talking about. We're not talking about George Floyd here. I'm talking about the lesbian and the officer you were just talking about. In a way, what the officer was doing was would be, in my eyes, considered somewhat of a hate crime. If I go and beat up a pedophile,
Right. I know what you're saying, but
that's
that
a
doesn't.
hate
Those
crime. That's
hate
a hate
crimes.
crime.
Hate crimes didn't exist back then. This was
Oh,
like in the '90s. Hate crimes didn't. That wasn't even a law back then.
oh,
So
all right, all right, all right. I
she
see.
got life sentence because she got in a tussle with this guy and he
I see
died.
that.
And he was a sheriff. He
I
he
guess
was
if
in his
that's not the
civvy. He
thing,
wasn't in his uniform. She didn't even know he was a sheriff. So she
right?
got
But
hauled in.
they still charged her for it.
Yeah, and they'll charge anybody whether they like if they're in uniform or not. You
Right,
know.
I understand. If it wasn't, that wasn't a thing back in the 90s.
No, hate crime wasn't even a law back then. It wasn't even a
No,
word. Nobody even knew what that
no.
was.
If I punch a pedophile in the mouth, it's a hate crime.
That's
So
crazy.
that's a new thing. That's a newer thing. So
Well, maybe Trump will
I
change some of
understand what
that.
you're saying. I get what you're saying. Huh?
Maybe Trump will change that because that's silly.
That is silly. I shouldn't get in trouble for that. That's crazy.
I mean, if you punch someone in the mouth, you punch someone in the mouth. It's assault. It shouldn't be
Shout out to
considered a hate
Alaskan Avenger, man. Use that hammer.
crime.
Yes, Alaskan Avenger. My
Yeah,
dude
what?
right there.
So while we're waiting for DVS, because I'm gonna release this like a pod, anyways. I'll make it a premiere. Mama Corrections, your sub should be going up. We've been dropping the link in the premieres, the last one we did, the first one. But dude, AZ, break down to everybody the Jodi Arias situation that you had with her, that you yeah, your experience with Jodi Arias.
When I was going to court, so what you have to understand is that when we're going to court in downtown, they'll have like 50 of us in a box. 50, 60, 70 of us in this little tiny box, and there'll be a whole bunch of them, right? And they all have these glass pane plain windows. You know what I mean? Bulletproof windows, whatever you want to call it. Um, I used to sit in the corner because I would have, like, if somebody was coming down that I knew was either a somebody or no good, I would have to sign and let the other inmates know, hey, such and such is coming down. Boom, boom. I'm signing, doing my thing. So I always sat in the corner, the furthest corner to the right, wherever I was at, so that I could see who's coming down. And Jodi Arias, she's famous for killing her ex in a real weird way. We don't even have to get into that because that's a whole. There's like 2 Lifetime movies. There's like a Netflix movie about her. If y'all want to know who Jodi Arias is, you can go look her up and you'll see she was a creep. She was a weirdo. She was a psychopath. Anyhow, I would always know when she was coming down. And at first I would sign and be like, hey, Jodi Arias walking the line. Boom, boom, sign that out. Ta, 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 ta. And I stopped doing it because when I would do that, all of a sudden, all these weird ass dudes would run up to the windows, damn near like little Riri's licking the window and trying to, like, get at her and stuff. And you know what I mean? Because she was pretty. She was pretty. Um, and she thought she was a real life celebrity. Like, she would walk down and she would do the whole handcuff thing that, like, beauty pageant ladies do, where they like cup their hands all weird and they like do that weird little wave. She would do that coming by and blow kisses to everybody. You know what I mean? Like, and all these dudes would sit there and they would be like, oh man, I would give her a baby. I'd impregnate her. And I used to just sit there and think, like, man, y'all are some sickos. Why would you pass on that horrible genetic trait? Like that woman's genetic trait, like her genetics, they're burnt. They're shot. She's a psychopath. Why would you want to pass that down to somebody else? You know what I mean? And I never was once like, I was never up at the window like, oh, hey, Jodi. Like, I thought she was pretty, but I wasn't attracted to her like that. Like, I thought she was a creep. You know what I mean? Like, why would you want to be
Hmm.
with somebody that did what she did to that man? That man didn't do anything to her. He didn't cheat on her. He didn't do nothing crazy. He just simply did not want to be with her anymore because she was a psycho.
What does she do?
She's in
So,
Perryville.
yeah, she's in Perryville, the women's prison. But what she did, so he broke up with her and told her he didn't want nothing to do with her. And after a certain amount of months, I can't remember how many, so I'm just saying a certain amount of months, X amount of months, she broke into his house and she set up a camera on his like right by his bed. And while she was getting tagged from the backside by another dude, because she broke into his house and set up a date with somebody and acted like that was her house, but it was actually his house. And she set up a camera, recorded it, and was sent him the videos of her getting tagged doggy style from his own house in his bed. And he placed
Mm.
several restraining orders on her to where it came to where she couldn't even be. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was like 1,000 feet. She couldn't even be with him, around him. Like, it was bad for Arizona to make it 1,000 or whatever X amount of feet. That's bad. That means Arizona really thinks you're a danger to that person. Usually it'd be like 50 or 100 feet, something like that. But like,
Yeah.
hers was like 1,000 feet, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, so don't quote me, but I'm just saying. Um, and then finally, she broke into his house one day and she shot him. Like, she emptied, I think she had a revolver, if I'm not mistaken, but she shot him tons of times and then stabbed him, like, while he was dead. He was already dead. He was unalived. He wasn't around. Soul already left his body, and she was just stabbing him multiple times. She was a psycho. She was a weird She was a weirdo, and this is like a famous story coming out of Arizona. We have a lot of weird stories that come out of Arizona, like the baseline killer. He was running around shooting horses in the face and unaliving horses before he actually unalived humans. Like we have a lot of weird stuff that comes out of Arizona, and she happens to be one of the weird ones. And she was super celebrity famous. Like she had like over $1 million put on her books before she went to prison because men were being like, here's $30,000, will you marry me? Here's 50,000, will you marry me? Here's 100,000, will you marry me? Like she legit was. She had got caught with a BlackBerry phone back when Blackberries were popular. It's a little older of a story, but she got caught in county jail with a BlackBerry. She had so you don't get pillows in county jail. They don't give you pillows. She had memory foam pillows in her cell. She was getting like something like 1,000 letters a week from men and women. And women. Oh, she was definitely, but she was more popular than Wade Wilson at that time. If social media was popping like it is now, she'd have been 100 times more famous than Wade Wilson ever will be. Even back then, she's more famous than Wade Wilson is now. Even back then, they made movies on this woman, like 3 or 4 movies.
Right.
He has no movies made on him yet.
They don't have no movies. Yeah, he don't have no movies.
None.
It's gonna be it's gonna be a shitty ass movie too.
Hey, well, unfortunately, he's gonna have movies made about him. He won't be able to profit from them.
Nah.
But he'll profit in a way, but he won't profit directly. It's against the law for somebody to profit off of their crime directly. Now he'll make profit in other ways with more donations than he already gets. He's gonna get more visits from women. He's gonna get more letters. He's gonna get more money
right now.
put.
He's in a hole till May 2025, and then he'll probably be getting a bunch of video visits, and he'll have his TV back. And
unfortunately, he's gonna make more money, and he's done the weirdest stuff, like getting off in another man's mouth while he's intoxicated on his meds, like weird. Like he's got weirdo shit. I feel like he's doing the most so that he can make every bit of his life count in his own sick way before he dies, because he's gonna die. He's on the death penalty.
He's gonna die this year. They're trying to say I clickbaited that last video, but listen, that's my manifestation. I think he'll die. I think not by the death penalty.
No, I don't think so. What state is he in? Florida, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you this. What does it look like in Florida for the death penalty? Because in Arizona, we have guys that have been on the death penalty for 35, 40 years and still haven't been unalived yet.
We do too. We also have a guy that's trying to expedite himself, and I think that Ron DeSantis is gonna. Ron DeSantis has been known to expedite multiple death row inmates. That's the one thing that might happen. That could happen, but I think it's gonna be something else. I think he's gonna Aaron Hernandez himself.
I'm gonna be honest, bro. I don't think he'll unalive himself because I feel like that dude is too full of himself to do that.
Talk that, yeah.
You see what I'm saying? That. Like, I just don't think. I think he thinks too highly of himself to take his own life. I'm hoping that another inmate does.
He's probably a narcissist.
Oh, 100%. He's a narcissist. 100%. He thinks he's he thinks he's God's gift to women. That's the weirdest part. You know what I'm saying? Like, he thinks that he's just, but then you have these weirdo females who are in love with this dude. You know what I mean? Like whatever. Hey, they are in love with the fact that he's a weird. I don't know what they're in love with, but they would never date that dude in real life. If he got out of prison right now, none of those females would allow him around their children. They wouldn't allow, I don't care how sick they are on here and how sick they are where they're talking to him. They're only like that because they know he can never get out. They know he can never get out. So they're living with the fantasy of this and that and the third. But if he got out today, they would not let him around their kids. They would not marry that dude because
Well, it
they
might
know
also
they might be next.
they like the bad boys. Some women like bad boys, you know.
But I don't like that because I'm considered, like, to a lot of females, I'm considered the bad boy, and I don't like I'm not letting that ride because he's not a bad boy. He's a piece of shit. He's a weirdo scumbag.
Perfect.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Perfect.
that dude's not protecting anybody. He's taking from people. He's taking from women. He ain't protecting women and children. He's taking from them.
Well, that might be part of the attraction is that it's a thriller thing. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I get it. But you know what? Them women need
I
just as
don't
much
I
as
don't get
help
it.
as he does.
I don't understand it. 'Cause-
No, I don't either. They need just as much help as he does.
right.
They need to see a therapist just as much as he does.
Well, hopefully they
To me,
don't have
that's
children.
weird. Doesn't understand sometimes why, hey, the women love me. And even sometimes she asks, I don't know why, like, you're a good dude, but at the same time, like, geez, I don't get it either. I just don't question it.
We appreciate everybody watching this podcast. This is the YouTube streets. New Age Plug, you did it again. We are finally out of here, but I just want to let everybody know, thank you. Carolyn Cooper, Steve Grimley, Holly from Canada, Barb, Emily, Melly, Mr. Diddy. The names keep going on and on. Bry Guy, you already know, man. Corrupt. Salute to everybody that supports this channel. The YouTube Streets Awards will be coming soon. I am working on it. It is a delay. I should have had it out in December. I know. It's just so much work and it's really just for the community. It never really gets any views. Last year, I think I got a couple thousand views or something, but I'm just going to keep working on that in the time being. Do got another Wade Wilson video coming out. I went through all the Melissa Jade DRs, and I'm just trying to make a video out of them right now. Salute to her, and she's doing big things. She just dropped a Bonnie Wiggins incident video. Make sure you check out Melissa Jade. Salute to everybody in the community, man. Sending healing energy, positive vibes, man. New Age Plug, I'm out. Have a great day.